Hey guys, this is Mr. O'Brien here, and this is your biology review video series that we're going to, touch on a bunch of different topics here to kind of help you through biology. Now, the first topic we're going to talk about is water. Now, water is what we refer to as the molecule of life because it is the most important molecule that allows life to exist on Earth. Without it, we do not have life. So water is a pretty simple molecule in that it's composed of two atoms. The first one is oxygen. Now oxygen, is the bigger of the two molecules, and we have two hydrogens. So these two molecules compose water. Now, water is held by what's known as covalent bonds, and these sticks right here are the covalent bonds. Now, covalent bonds, what it is the sharing of electrons. Now, oxygen, let's go a different color here. Oxygen has 6 valence electrons. So what that means is there's 6 electrons in its outer shell for sharing. Now hydrogen only has 1. So what happens is when these molecules get together, they distribute, or they kind of share electrons in order to fill each other's outer shell. This sharing of electrons allows for a very strong bond. Now, water is what's known as a polar molecule. And what polar means is it simply means it has a charge. So in other words, water has a slight positive and negative charge towards these certain atoms. Now, this charge, obviously, the oxygen has a partial negative. The hydrogens have a partial positive. And the reason for that is the electrons are more closely pulled toward the oxygen because it is a bigger molecule, which means that those negative electrons are associated more with the oxygen than they are the hydrogen, which creates these poles or these charged molecules. So this charging of the molecules, this positive or this negative of the oxygen, this positive of the hydrogen, it forms the molecules of water to bind together, and they bind together with something called the hydrogen bond. Hydrogen bonding is what makes water the molecule of life, the really important one. What hydrogen bonds do is the partial positive of the hydrogens are attracted to the partial negative of the oxygens. So hydrogen bonds give water a lot of properties that allow life to exist, and some of these properties are really, really important. So the first one we want to talk about is cohesion. Now, cohesion is this tendency of water to stick together. So because water sticks together and binds to each other, water is actually able to move from the roots of trees all the way up to the tops of the leaves, and it is transpired out. Okay? So without adhesion and cohesion, without the sticking property of water, a lot of life wouldn't be able to exist. So adhesion is where water sticks to another object, okay? So this would be like water sticking to the sides of the roots and allows it to climb up that tree. Another thing with hydrogen bonds is that it creates surface tension. So this guy right here, you see how this bug is able to almost stand on top of the water. So the hydrogen bond creates this small tension, and small bugs are allowed to stand on that and not break the surface, okay? So cohesion, water sticking to water, adhesion, water sticking to other objects, and surface tension, all formed by hydrogen bonds. Now, water also has what's known as a high specific heat. So specific heat is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water or liquid by 1 degree. So high specific heat, what this means is that water takes a long time to heat up. It also takes a long time to cool down. So like for example, temperatures on land and in water are different. Usually water is cooler than land. And what happens is water heats up much slower than the land. Okay? So what this does is it prevents the water from almost, heating up to the temperature outside very quickly. Now, why this is important in organism is high specific heat prevents these organisms from getting too hot too quickly. Now, humans are made of 75% water, roughly. So, in other words, because we have all this water, it takes us a long time to heat up. So we don't heat up and overheat ourselves because of the large amount of water we have in there. Now, water is also more dense than the frozen ice. Now, this is different than most other solids. Usually solids are more dense. And the reason, again, is because of these hydrogen bonds. So what happens in ice is when ice forms, the hydrogen bonds become much more stable, and they form these nice lattice patterns. Now, in liquid, the bonds are constantly breaking and reforming, which is good in terms of water. That's how we can pour that water out. But because ice becomes less dense, what happens is ice forms on top of lakes and rivers and streams. So in other words, what this ice does is, one, it insulates the organisms underneath it, and two, it actually, if ice was denser than water, this would sink and crush all aquatic life. So ice forms on the top of bodies of water, which insulates the aquatic organisms and keeps them alive. Now, water is also what's known as a universal solid, or solvent. And what this means is that almost everything dissolves in water. If something is polar, meaning they have a charge when they're dissolved, water will dissolve it. So, for example, sodium chloride. Sodium has a positive charge, chlorine has a negative. Water will actually surround that with the negative oxygens to dissolve it in water. And the same thing with chlorine, except the hydrogens surround it. So, almost everything dissolves in water. The only thing that doesn't is oil. The reason for that is oil is a non-polar molecule, meaning it's very stable and doesn't have charge. So the water is not able to dissolve that in, which is why the oil floats to the top. So a solvent is a liquid in which another substance can dissolve in. Water is one of the best. Because it can dissolve a lot of stuff in, it allows a lot of chemicals to be associated, especially in our blood. So that's our video here on water. Now, water, again, very important. Water forms hydrogen bonds, which allows it to do a lot of the characteristics that allow life to occur. So because of the hydrogen bonds, we have adhesion, cohesion, surface tension. Ice is denser than water, and also we also have the specific heat. So these different things, because of the hydrogen bonds, allow water to be a very important molecule. Hopefully this review video helps you. This is Mr. O'Brien, signing off.